character Willow for deaf students, and they've now got past a GCSE in sign language, which is the first of its kind. So as far as the project was concerned, this was a really strong one, and we relied heavily on the likes of the wallpaper process to get them through and to get that understanding across. So that was quite challenging. Some of you will be familiar with the project management tree swing cartoon. You've seen this one before, have you? You familiar with this? See a few nodding heads. Programmers or managers will have come across this before. I only seen it the other day. I thought it was right on the money for one of the problems that we had, or two of the problems. So how the objective was explained, how the objective was understood, the minimal viable product, how it translated to the developer, DevOps got their hands on it, what they actually needed, and what the thing ended up costing. So there's a lot of, this is actually from, initially came up with this cartoon in 1950 in London, as far as I know. But that problem still exists today, and even more so today because everything's changing so quickly. This for me is, we've all been in these design thinking workshops before, and it is a lot of sticky notes on the walls, which is great, and there is innovative stuff happening in that moment, but there's a problem with that. It does favour the extroverts. So if you're in that environment, you haven't met this team before perhaps, or maybe you have, but the introverts aren't going to go up there and even put a sticky note on. That's a challenging enough thing for some people to do. It suits a lot of people, but it doesn't suit others. The problem is then once you walk away, you go for lunch or you meet the next day, it was, geez, what was the idea again? You're not too sure. So this was the concept behind the wallpaper process then, is to have this pre-printed workflow, almost like a proof of concept, where you have a document that you can go back to. So whenever you're finished this process, the students are working on a Donegal Reconnect project that they're doing at the minute, but they can go back to that week in, week out, and look at the bottom and see where they last were, instead of go back into the room full of sticky notes and go, Jesus, where were we on this project? So that's where it came from. The pre-process wallpaper process system, the word system, set of principles and procedures according to which something is done. It was called design thinking or wallpaper process method, first of all, but it changed it to system because it kind of suits it a little bit better. Around design thinking then, and it not being design, but it is in-house within companies, it is teachable and scalable. If you've got a management team that can get their head around it and around this process, there's no reason you can't use this week in, week out. Stakeholders that understand the objective, you need them in a room to make it happen, so it's important that you get that cross-disciplinary team together and get to that point where the first paper is confirming the objective, making sure that you're avoiding that curse of knowledge that everybody in the room might not know what you're trying to solve. The problems then, as I mentioned before, the current design system, the design thinking sessions, they do favour the extroverts. The documentation at the end of it is very vague. The deliverables sometimes don't follow up, more often than not. It's difficult to get to a point where, right, we've got a minimal viable product at the end, we've got a good prototype. And then the conversion point to the next team that has to develop this idea, that's kind of non-existent. So that's what the process does. It forces those conversations. So it allows for introverts, it allows for time to go off individually, it allows for group work. There is a strong documentation at the end. If you want to photograph this and generate a report, there's lots of kind of app scanners that you can use for that type of thing, depending on your in-house policy and photographing work. It concentrates on the user and it leads towards a prototype at the end. So it forces the conversion. So it means at the end of it that you have this minimal viable product, or you have this prototype that you can go and talk to somebody else about it and bring it to the next phase. It goes through 5 papers. The first one being objective, second users, into ideate, iterate, and then implement. So there is a forced agenda as you go through it. I'll scoot past this here. At the end of the hackathon, I asked did a survey through America. Would people recommend this process to to their friends and colleagues, it came back over 90% that were in favour of seeing this again or recommending it. So the proof was in the pudding. It did work, and it did show results. It's currently, that's just a wee video at the end here. It's a 7.5 metre roll, and it's a digital print, so they are quite expensive to print. They're going to go on the website tomorrow. They're going to retail at about €150. We're going for €100 tonight, if anyone's interested in buying them, and there'll be a free one for the person that does the best tweet at the end, if you're interested in it. If you want to talk more about it, or if you want to order more than one, please come and talk to me afterwards. But this is how it's printed. It comes off a roll, it goes onto a roll, so there's a seamless print through it. Once I got a lot of different quotes from different printers, anything from €200 up to €600 or €800, which was ridiculous. But going from a drum, a cylinder, and into a roll-to-roll process was a lot cheaper to get them done. So it was able to get the costs back down. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Just work away. Lucia Fonte is up next. She's over from Google in London, and she's going to talk you through US as well. Lucia here, please.
Alright, good evening everyone. I want to first of all thank Patrick for inviting me over to LYIT and come and talk to you all this evening and earlier.